is going to, Leonard Scott is going to start us off. Are you ready, Monsignor?
Ready?
If you would like to come up and start us off. And then we've got a few other people after the Monsignor.
Hope I'm not
And then
blocking
after that,
anybody's
we'll
view.
switch to the play reading.
I've been asked to give a reading from Charles R. Morris. Charlie was a student here from 1954 to 1959. We graduated together from here, and after graduation he went on to the University of Pennsylvania, where he obtained a degree in journalism. He also had expertise in law. I think he studied law and banking. He worked in law, worked in banking, worked in administration, government administration in the city of New York and in the state of Washington. In 2009, the American magazine asked him to do a synopsis of their work. It was their 100th anniversary. And so he wrote what was really two articles, one about the first 50 years and the second about the second 50 years. And the second one is called Catholic Moments, America Engages a New World. And as I read this, understand that when he writes America, he has it in bold because he's talking not about the country, but about the magazine. The Catholic Church has long struggled for recognition and acceptance within the U.S. polity, came to a glorious climax with John Kennedy's election to the presidency, an event that for Catholics carried a symbolism much like Barack Obama's elevation did for African Americans. And like Barack Obama, Kennedy's rise took place outside the ethnic cocoon that had been reliable mainstay in his political supper.
Kennedy's, bring it down here.
I'm trouble saying.
Help with the lighting. We could bring it down here.
Turned out was just the last leading edge to the widespread movement of Catholics in America, secular elite, accompanied by the commensurate diminution of a deference paid by a lay faithful to the church's authority. America maintained its traditional editorial focus on unions, civil rights, social welfare, and its vigorous anti-communism. But the struggle of the American church to find a new footing between an empowered laity and a revenge Vatican occupied the increasing share of editorial attention in the second half of the magazine's 100-year lifetime. 1959 to 1968. John Kennedy's election to the presidency was the first great Catholic event of the decade, and there is a distinct emotional arc in America's covering of his White House run. First, the dispassionate examination of the obligations of Catholic officials, the open bitterness of Protestant anti-Kennedy mobilization pretended another prejudice-laced Al Smith campaign. Next, near-giddy incredulity at the Kennedy's poll stage after the first televised debate. And finally, unabated joy at the final ratification of a full first-class citizenship for American Catholics. The second great event was the Second Vatican Council. America's religious journalism grew more probing, more inward-looking, more theological, and, as the never-ending council plodded on, more critical. Francis X. Murphy, CSSM, the New Yorker pseudonymous Xavier Rin, coyly called for the less conciliar secrecy. The liturgical movement and the age of the layman pretended a new, highly participatory form of parish life. Keep going.
Oh,
1969 to 1978. The 1970s were not a happy time for the United States, and America reflected that mood. My notes from the decade have distinct, quote, "things fall apart, the center cannot hold," close quote, to get flavor. The previous decade's optimism on new models of the church had mostly dissipated. The Reverend Andrew Greeley wrote of the, quote, "end of American Catholicism in the wake of Humanae Vitae." Another author suggested that only Ronner, S.J., and Hans Kuhn wrote on disagreeing with the Pope, while Every Dulles, S.J., weighed in on the limits of papal infallibility. Disappointment followed high hopes for the 1971 World Synod of Bishops. There were meditations on the plague of alcoholism among priests and on whether the American church was headed toward a steady improvement in liturgies and music. On social issues, there was a shock of the Roe versus Wade decision of 1973, only 8 years after the decision in Griswold had established a right to contraceptive privacy. In 1978, the editors warned of the ambitious program Planned Parenthood, now as, quote, respectable as the Red Cross, close quote, to, quote, eliminate any moral standards that would inhibit that view of what population control should be. On civil rights, the editors were disappointed in Richard Nixon's demagoguery on the school busing and deplored Catholic school segregation in Louisiana, an extended place chronicled the struggles of a black Catholic for acceptance within her church, a constant America theme for the last 60 years. 1979 to 1988, America's focus on eternal issues of Catholicism intensified. One line of articles could be called managerial, a piece by Reverend Charles Curran on the church's poor internal management, the new prominence of Hispanics in the North New York Catholic population, Curran and the editors on separating heresy from dissent, the expanding roles of women in parishes, attracting teens to Mass, blunt assessments of the miserable leadership skills of the bishops, the sharp fall off in Catholic availing themselves of penance, cleansing up a Vatican financial mess, and the proper role of bishops' conferences. Nuclear tensions were high in Europe as Carter and Reagan administrations responded to the Soviet medium-range missile buildup with equivalent American missiles. America sided strongly with the European protesters, was enthusiastic about the 1983 Bishop Statement on nuclear weapons, and was pleased at the mutual Euro missile removal agreements in 1987. 1988 to 1989 to 1998. Abortion was a major America focus of the 1990s. An article on Catholic abortion rates, were they really as high as among non-Catholics, drew many letters. Was there room for, quote, prudent, close quote, accommodations? Could Catholic and human rights Could Catholic politicians work to reduce abortions when abolition was not a practical possibility? Several articles link abortion and human rights. Archbishop John Quinn wrote that abortion was the axe at the root of human rights. America noted that the pro-choice movement was confused on the moral question. They tried to ignore it, but it would not go away. They were more reports from Operation Rescue.